While only 60,000 people reside in Greenland, the conditions in this mostly ice-covered country could directly infect the entire world. Here to discuss how climate change has created and accelerated a melting trend in Greenland, please welcome from NASA's Goddard Institute for Space Studies, Dr. Shindell, Special Advisor to the Climate Reality Project, Gloria Rubin, from Harvard University, oceanographer and terrestrial ecologist, Dr. Naomi Levine, a pianist, composer and Academy Award winner, Nathan Currier, and from CUNY Institute for Sustainable Cities, Professor Bill Selecki. Welcome. Let's begin with Dr. Drew and talk about what's happening in terms of global climate change right now, and looking back over 100 years and 10 years to bring us up to speed about what's happening now.
Well, what we're seeing in terms of global average temperature is a very rapid increase in terms of historical precedent. So temperatures have not gone up. They've gone up about a degree. Doesn't sound like much, but it's actually quite a lot. When we look back in periods of the Earth's history, when the planet was only about 2 or 3 degrees warmer, conditions were vastly different. So it's a small amount in the global average. And what's more important maybe is that a lot of regions, especially the high latitudes in the Arctic, have seen much more rapid change, even 5 times the global mean in some parts of the year. So we're seeing big changes. We're seeing the snow cover retreat. We're seeing the sea ice in the Arctic melt down to record low temperatures. And we're seeing changes in Greenland and other permanent ice sheets too, or what we thought were permanent.
We can do a deep dive into Greenland and understand a little bit more how the events there are affecting us. And Nathan, perhaps you could speak a little bit about Greenland's glaciers and what's happening there.
First, to carry on with what Bill just said, I mean, in terms of the value to us of Greenland staying as it is, if it all melted, it would rise sea levels by 20 feet. And, you know, obviously the implications of that are staggering if we think of trillions of dollars of real estate per meter of sea level rise. Unquestionably, the glaciers all over Greenland are changing very rapidly. Just recently, it was in the news that the Petermann Glacier in the north calved what is probably the largest iceberg in the last century, 4 times the size of Manhattan. Alan Hubbard, a glaciologist who went back there after having been there last in 2009, said, imagine that you went to the Grand Canyon and you saw that volume as ice, and you came back 2 years later and that whole volume had turned to water. And that's literally what it's like there. At the same time, all the glaciers on other sides of Greenland, the Jakobshavn on the west and the Helheim on the southeast, are changing rapidly as well.
You mentioned, you know, if the whole of Greenland melted.
Yes.
I mean, what kind of time frame roughly would that be? Not to be alarmist, but just to give people a real sense of what the stakes are.
Yeah, well, you know, that's one of the gigantic questions, is the rate of acceleration. And from the depths of the last ice age, sea level has risen 400 feet. And at one point, there's a time period called Pulse Water Melt 1A, when it was very steep, and that rate is what we see as sort of a maximum rate that we might be accelerating to. And if we get to that, then it's about 1 meter per decade. And if, you know, one can do the math, how long that would take at 1 meter per decade. Of course, it's not alone. There are other places that are melting fast on other parts of the world. The West Antarctic ice sheet holds about the same mass as Greenland. So that would also be 20 feet if it melted. And the dynamics there are very different, where it could happen actually more quickly because of the fact that some of it is under sea level, so it could potentially
Right, there's a lot
collapse.
of mitigating factors, I hear that.
But, you know, one of the things that I think happens so often in discussions of sea level rise is that it's constrained to this limit of 2,100. But the sea doesn't care about our limit of 2,100. It's going to continue. And sea level rise is something that happens slowly. And I think that one of the things, for me, I'm always shocked that it's never said, is that, well, what if we stabilized at what we have right now in terms of CO2, 390 something ppms? Where would sea level rise end up eventually? And maybe Drew can say what what he would take on that.
Well, Drew, would you like to carry on
Yeah.
from that? Quite the lead up there.
Because I think it's just so staggering, actually.
Yeah, well, I don't remember the exact
I think it's
number,
120
but
feet, actually.
Okay,
That about 20 million years ago, CO2 was about 390, and sea levels were about 120 feet
let's
high.
bring the discussion back to Greenland. How do we address climate change? Maybe Naomi or Nathan, you want to weigh in there?
I have on my T-shirt here
He's brought a visual aid with him.
something that I think is important for how we address this.
What is that? Can you explain what's going on
This is
there?
a graph from a UNEP, United Nations Environmental Program, and WMO, the World Meteorological Association organization.
There you go.
A new report, a very large report with hundreds of participants, of which Drew is the lead coordinator. And I would like Drew to just say a little bit about what this graph says, because I think it's so absolutely vital to where we are today. And in a way, you know, one of the functions of something like this, what we're doing is showing the absolute paucity of any legitimacy to these deniers. But we also have a responsibility for ourselves to really get it right, aside from the deniers. We can't spend all our energy just fighting the deniers, right? And so this, I think, is sort of the next wave of doing it right.
And in addition to having a great T-shirt like that, you know, all we have to do to gain even more evidence, along with listening to the scientists, they asked me to work at NASA, by the way, but I decided not, is just look out our windows.
Yes.
And we can see evidence in our own communities and around the globe on a daily basis.
I just wanted to say, actually, following up on Nathan's wonderful attire.
Yes. Eco-fashion, yeah.
In addition to tackling carbon dioxide, we should try to tackle all of the problem, all of the things that are causing climate change. And you know, it's a complicated problem, and sometimes people don't want to listen to that. They don't want to hear it. But actually, that complication can work to our advantage, and we can have strategies that